have y'all ever been to Pier 24 in San Francisco? Has anybody ever been to there? Been to that? It's an incredible. It's a pier out on the San Francisco Bay that a .com person, I forgot his name, bought, and he started collecting photography. And it's an incredible environment. And you go there, and when I went there, it was like you walk in. There's like a William Eggleston next to a Deanne Arbus, next to a Ansel Adams, next to a August Sander, next to Alex Soth, like greatest hits of 20th century photography, but there's no connection between the work. So it kind of dumbed everything down. So when I saw that, I was really kind of, reinforced the way I feel about, curating instead of jurying. Of course, we all bring our own aesthetic sensibilities to the table, and I will just tell you what I personally like. And maybe as a warning to you guys if I ever jury another show, like what not to do. So I'll speak to that too. So what do I like? Well, when I look for a photograph, I look for what everybody else sees as visual interest in the image. That can be subject matter, be composition, lighting. Lighting is the most important aspect of photography. So if the lighting's not good, the picture usually isn't good. So lighting is so important. I look for people who see beyond the ordinary, who are making visually striking images that they're either too obvious, too mundane, or kind of stretching the medium. Technical skill is very important. Craftsmanship, that means a lot to me, and I think it was a really wonderful thing that Richard and the New Orleans Montgomery Photo Fest did. Is when I chose the work for the show, I was like, okay, Richard, now do I choose the winners? He's like, no, wait till you get to Montgomery and see them in person. That's really a great thing. I mean, you have to see photographs in person. When you look at stuff online, you get fooled all the time, especially with digital photography. There's something about the way the pixels line up on the computer screen. And way you look at it on the computer screen versus analog photography, which I'm very rarely disappointed when I see an analog photograph that I really like online. When I see it in person, it's usually, it's the quality I thought. But with a lot of digital photography especially, I have to see it in person. If I ever show or interested in a person to exhibit at the Ogden Museum, I have to do a studio visit, and I have to see prints. I mean, that's just very elementary and important. And the one time I didn't do that, I was burnt. I was burnt by the quality of the work, by seeing it online, and I'll never do that again. Conceptual-based work I really love. Now, with this show, all I saw was the images. There was nothing about the photographer. I didn't know who the photographer was. Probably about out of the 60 or something different individuals, 65. I meant to ask you that, Warren, how many people applied and how many works. But I knew about 10 of the people. I recognized their work. But a lot of jury exhibitions, they'll have a statement, artist statement, which I think is really important. A lot of times it's the statement that wins me over. You would think it's the picture. The picture should stand on its own. And yes, it should, but sometimes you do need an explanation of what's going on if it's not coming through in the picture, and it makes me love the work even more. I love landscape, still life, portraiture. It's really weird because in my own work, I do know portraits. I'm not a portrait photographer. I find that very difficult. I find it very difficult to engage people, and I'm shy, but I seem to always gravitate towards portraiture. In the show, I think it's probably the biggest percentage of the work are portraits, and I think that's just something about the human condition, the human face, the expression that's universal, that everybody is very much fascinated by. And okay. So what don't I like? Okay, this is going to probably piss some people off. Travel photography, sorry. Vacation photography, I just got back from Mexico 14 days, and I brought my camera with me, and I took a bunch of pictures. But those are going to stay in my photo album at home. I mean, if people still have photo albums. I don't know. I still shoot film. So um, if that's the kind of photography you do, that's great. And so, I'm not saying that negates it across the board. If it's a really great picture of your vacation in Venice, or if you're a photographer in Montgomery and that's the only time you take pictures is when you go on the road, that's fine. But I just find those a little forced sometimes, and so it's usually kind of a deal killer for me. Um, yeah, keep those in the family photo album. And the other one, the big one, the number one is digital manipulation. Anything with Photoshop, Lightroom, where you're really pumping up the imagery with filters and yeah, it's just, to me, it's really cheesy. I'm sorry. It probably was good in 1992, but it just doesn't work anymore. There's a photographer in New Orleans who does a lot of digital manipulation, but he does it so subtly, and he just kind of smooths the surfaces on the work. And I really like what he's doing, but it's so subtle that you can't tell. So yeah, keep off those filters and stuff in Photoshop, because I just think it overpowers the idea behind on the images. Sometimes the tools are more powerful than the thought, and I think that all you need is a lens, an aperture and a shutter, and and how you get there. I really don't care if it's digital. I don't if it's film photography or if you made a picture on your phone. So here's some suggestions about submitting work that I think that might help some of you people out, because I've made a lot of these mistakes myself as a person who juries a lot of exhibitions. So if you're submitting work for an exhibition, galleries, schools, try to get in school, or grants, this is kind of my suggestions is if you say submit 5 to 10 images, what I think translates the best when I'm scrolling through thousands of images is a singular, strong body of work, a series. Not to show, don't try to show me how versatile you are as a photographer. Don't, have one cyanotype, one color image, one black and white picture of your cat, one color picture still life, one picture, that to me makes me look like you're bipolar, or or you're confused. You don't know what you want. But if you send 10 pictures of, a series you're working on, to me, that looks like it says to me that you're really focused and serious about something. And I think that's, when I submitted to grad school, I did the exact opposite and somehow got in. But I don't think it's the way to go. If you're doing installation work, or say you're working and doing light boxes in photography, always take a picture of your installation or a detail. I think that really helps explain what you're doing. So an image of your work, and then an installation shot is always great to give it context. Most of you guys, since you're not painters or such, and you're all photographers, so this probably doesn't apply, but quality reproductions of your work, know how to photograph your art. Always send in the proper dimensions, when they say, 300 dpi at 6.10 inches, do that, because you don't want to open up the file and it be so big that you're just seeing a detail. And also, finally, is knowing how to write about your work is so important. If there is if they do ask for a statement, which I think is great. So I know it's really hard to write about your own work, but to be able to explain what you're doing really means a lot to a juror, a narrative of what you're doing, and it also gives it context. And so, yeah, those are just some suggestions I have. Does anybody have any questions? I was going to go through the slide, just some of the images I selected, and then just kind of talk about why I might have chosen those. This is a slide presentation that Richard put together, and I kind of chimed in on. But does anybody have any questions about any of the stuff we went over, or we can wait till the end? Okay, so Jossie Pan. This work, this was my best to show. This was the image that I gave best to show. And it's from her drive-through series. And Jossie Pan, y'all might know her, I don't. It's one of the beauties about doing these jurying these shows is I find out about new artists. And I did not know this person's work. She was born in China and got her bachelor's degree in photo at University of Alabama, and then she went on to get her MFA at University of Pennsylvania. She's interested in exploring relationships between strangers and time. She lives and works in Philadelphia now. This series is Drive Through, which she was she was a finalist for Lens Culture Portrait Awards in 2020. And she also did a series on convenience store portraits and passport photos. So I put 3 of her works in the show, and because I think maybe this might not be the strongest image in the show. I think there might have been a better photograph, but I think when you looked at the series alone, I think it just stood out. I just think it's a really smart series, and it's so obvious, right? And I love the composition. I don't know if she photographed this through her car window or not, but I love the rectangle within the rectangle framing this person. And just the ordinariness of seeing these people or going through a drive-through window and thinking, "Wow, I'll do a series of that," just like she did convenience store workers. I also think that these people are really, I feel bad for them because they're really abused a lot. People treat them really badly, and so I think it's nice that she gives them an honorable, she's pointing her lens at these folks and kind of elevating them, which I think is very dignified. And I just think it's a really smart body of work, and it really resonated to me. Just the dignity that she gives her subjects in this. And anyway, so I didn't know that when I looked at the work. I didn't know who did this. It was until after we chose the work and Richard sent me the names that I kind of went to everybody's website and found out more about them. But yeah, I just think this is a brilliant series, and so yeah, that's why I gave her best in show. I just think it's really smart. It's very smart. This is Ginger Davis, and this was a manipulation part of submission, whereas Jossie Pan, by the way, was color photography. The name of this photograph is Fusion, and Ginger is from Tuscaloosa. She goes to the University of Houston. Her work focuses on economic issues and climate change, and this project is called Exposing Time, and what she's doing is making images with lensless camera, a pinhole camera, which she made out of a coffee can. Now, I made my pinhole camera was a Quaker Oats box, by the way, which worked really well. But yeah, I didn't know how this image was made until after, like I said, but visually I thought it was really interesting. I really didn't know what was going on in it. I just liked the color. I liked the shape. It was abstract. It asked more questions than it answered. So that's what drew me towards this image. This is Ashley Coleman, Bloody Nose, and this was from her Holding Back series. And Ashley, I actually know Ashley, and I recognize this work when she submitted it. She's a mother, and she lives in the Mississippi Delta, and she photographs with a Hasselblad camera film. And, she's kind of doing the Sally Mann, in color. She's photographing her children. And they're really mundane. A lot of them are, look like they might be staged. A lot of them are just, day-to-day life with her children. But they're beautifully done. They're beautifully printed. Yeah. it's just really strong work. She's been in exhibitions at the Ogden. We do a show every year at the Ogden called Currents, which I encourage you guys to apply. We do it through the New Orleans Photo Alliance. And all you have to do is join the New Orleans Photo Alliance. I believe it's $40 a year. And then you can apply for the current show. And we do an exhibition in December during our Photo Fest, which is called Photo NOLA. And Ashley, that's how I met Ashley. She's also in a photo group called Due South with other couple friends of mine. But her work is really smart and beautifully done, beautifully printed. This is Smooch Attack by Prescott Lassman, and he's an attorney with a master's in photography. He was at the opening last night. Okay, hey, I didn't recognize you. You look different today. You got a hat and glasses. Good to see you. And I think he works in what we would call street photography. He had two works that were in the show. One was color, and one was black and white, and it kind of negated what I said to send really different work to apply, because he did get in. I guess I probably didn't think it was the same person because the work was so different. But yeah, it's a really interesting image. I love the receding lines in this photograph. It's very dynamic. When you talk about street photography, you talk about people like Diane Arbus, Friedlander, and Winogrand, and I definitely think he works in that vein. And this was, of course, in the black and white category. Visually interesting picture. This is for the manipulation category. It's a myrtle cope, sunlight on branches, and it's an embroidered piece. It's an embroidered photograph, and there wasn't very many submissions to manipulation. I forgot how many there were, maybe 10. And but I really loved this piece when I saw it in person. Really, it's one of those things that's so tactile, becomes sculptural when you start, applying, building it upon a photograph with, whether you're drawing upon it or put it in an installation context, or in this case, embroidering it. It becomes sculptural. It becomes like a painting process. It becomes an additive process. A lot of people say photography is a subtractive process because in the real world, when you're out there photographing, you're looking through a lens and you're subtracting all that's around you and focusing on one thing, where with painting, you're adding, and that's what they're doing, additive process. So it had a really nice feel to it. There's a few people now that are doing this kind of embroidery work, and I'm really enjoying seeing it. I think it's really sweet. There's a woman in Mobile, Fairhope, Pinky Bass. Do y'all know Pinky? The great Alabama photographer who's doing really wonderful embroidery work with photography. If you have a chance, check out her work. This is Sandy Burr, across the lake, and alternative process. She lives in Nashville and works in graphic design. She works in encaustic. So this is a straight digital photograph, and then she dips it in wax, and it has this surface quality that kind of gives it the soft focus to it. Now, this is where I beg to differ with some of these categories, because I don't think this is alternative process. I think this is manipulation, because she's taking a straight photograph and then adding to it. She's manipulating it through the use of wax. To me, alternative processes means, the way I learned it, is 19th century processes. So alternative processes is cyanotypes, gum bichromite prints, palladium, platinum. I mean, there's a book called Alternative Processes, 19th Century Revisited, which I studied with a photographer named Robert Fichter, and he was one of the masters of rediscovering 19th century processes in the 1960s. So I studied, the process. I know how to do a lot of them. And so I don't think this is alternative process. I think this is manipulation. But anyway, that's a technicality. And I heard that the photographers got to choose their category, but I think this is one that she kind of, I would think this would have been a manipulation category, but that's not to take away from it's a beautiful photograph. This is alternative process. This is Matt Macara, and it's called Reach, and this is a palladium platinum print, and which was the most popular form of photo printing pre-World War I. And what happened is in World War I, the need for palladium and platinum was so great that silver gelatin took over because people stopped doing it and they didn't have access to this material. But the beauty of this process is that you have a really long tonal range, and they're also very, very archival. They'll last longer than we will. And they're the most permanent photo process, then I think followed by gelatin silver. But it's a beautiful process. I love that there's no real edges to this picture. It just kind of falls off. And that's where he had painted on the emulsion and made the print. So I thought that was a very striking image. There was a lot of tree images, and there was also a lot of birds, which I love birds. So, but none of them made the PowerPoint. This is Harry Longstreet, and I don't know much about Harry. This one's called Learning Curve. I know he's from Bainbridge Island, Washington. He's a commercial photographer, and I think that comes through in this image. What I think's interesting about it is the multiple imagery within one frame. You know, I don't know how he did it. He might have done it with a flash or something. And, you know, in one frame and just did multiple flashes to get the person kind of moving. But I think it's very fascinating that way. It's kind of like the Muybridge motion photographs. And also I love the aspect ratio. It's like 16:9, you know, it's a very different aspect ratio. It's a really great image. So that was under the color category. Sydney Foster, who I don't know if some of you guys know Sydney. I didn't know this work until this exhibition, and I found out about it. I love the work. I think it's great. This is Two-Spirited Soldier. It's in the color category, and Sydney's from Montgomery. She lives and works in Atlanta, and she's a photographer and director. She's done commercial work for Foot Locker, Nike, Target. Her work kind of blends art and fashion. And one thing I noticed about this, now am I hallucinating? Because I could be, because I'm like blown out from the road, but her print in the exhibition was a square, wasn't it? This was cropped in the exhibition. If I remember correctly, seeing it on the wall.
The print was a different picture. Yesterday we saw a different picture of a man without a shirt.
Yeah, there was two. She had two. Yeah, she had two. That was the best to show. That was the best in color. No, Sydney had two pictures. This one was in it, and the guy with a color hat, flowers, which I gave best to show in color. I was going to give this one best to show in color because I did like this one better, seeing it on the computer screen. But when I saw it in person, I liked the other one better. I thought it clicked the boxes for, you know, color images. I thought the color was more spectacular, and but I do love this image too. And anyway, she's a really wonderful photographer, and I thought the work was great. And honestly, you know, you could debate that her image was as strong as I think, you know, what I gave is the best to show. I just thought the body of work was, when you took it all together, was better. But I thought these two artists were really standouts in the exhibition. And the one I gave best color photograph was I'm sorry, I don't have the title for it now, but it was her other image. But I also do think she cropped it. I think the one in the show is a square, you know, and where this one is. But there was also there's something else about this picture I thought was interesting. I didn't really think about it at first. Do y'all know who Ramel Ross is? Photographer. He did a documentary that he wanted. He was nominated for an Emmy. It was called Hell County This Morning, This Evening. I showed his work at the Ogden Museum, but he's a great photographer. He played basketball at Georgetown, but he's been photographing in Hell County in Greensboro for over a decade now. And he's African American, from the D.C. area. But whenever he photographs his his people, he has a group of people that he works with, all African American. He always obscures their faces, and that's a kind of a homage to the white gaze and the way African Americans have always been portrayed, usually by white artists. And so I don't know if that's part of this picture, but I thought about it this morning, but I thought it was really interesting. It's like the subjects reveal themselves. The artists don't reveal them. So I think it's a nice dichotomy, but it's really smart work. And honestly, when I saw this work, I thought it was an artist in New Orleans named Trinity Thomas, who's a young African American photographer doing great work. And I thought it was Trinity's work because Trinity photographs kind of fashion, color photography, and he told me he was going to apply, and he didn't. Kristen Hoving, another alternative process that should be in the manipulation category. I didn't know this was her, but I reviewed her work at Photo Nola last year, and it's really beautiful, ethereal piece. What I like about it is I think it's a Butterfly Keeper is the title. I think it's just a digital, art pigment print, and then I think she prints on fabric and kind of layers it over, so you get this kind of three-dimensional effect. So it's a nice kind of installation work. Paul Wolf, disc thrower. Is Paul in the audience today? He was at the opening last night. I kind of went back and forth with his images, but Paul is a candidate MFA candidate at Louisiana Tech University, and they have a really good program there. I know the guy who's the photography professor there, Frank Hamrick, and they're really putting out some really good photographers. But his work deals with body imagery, and and I think about too the idea of invisibility in society. The way we put so much emphasis on beauty. Like I'm finding out now in my older age that I'm become more and more invisible. And the way that people view other people. And there's a great body of work. And I asked him last night if he knew this work. Her name is Haley Morris Caffiero. If y'all look her up, it's amazing work. And she's she has weight issues, let's just put it that way, and she photographs herself in the public, and the way that people interact with her is it's unbelievable how cruel it is, and she documents it, and so it's just it's also it's kind of provocateur, it's performance art, so I think it's really brave work. Let's just say that. I just think it's really brave for him to make this kind of work, and I guess that's a homage to was it Da Vinci painting, drawing. This is Allison Plass, and she's from upstate New York, and her series is called By the Lake. And what attracted me to it is I love the color. This is the color category again, just the greens, the green in the towel, the green in the foliage, and just the way the red, the little buds kind of stick out. And anyway, I just think it's a really interesting image. She's based in New York, as I said. It's from the Hold Me Tight series, which explores moments of vulnerability and intimacy between her sons and her husband and their relationship. So I thought it was really well made, well done. This is Tom Bennett. He's from New Orleans, and I'll admit he's a friend of mine. I love his work. He's a super smart photographer. I did give this Best of Show in Black and White category, and it wasn't because he was my friend. There was no nepotism. I truly thought it was the best image in the show, and it wasn't this one. It was the one with the car. But this was from the same series. And he's always doing different work. Every time I see him, he's like, yeah, I'm working on this new project. But this was shot with a film camera, which was a 7x17 camera, which is such a weird aspect ratio. And then he contact prints these in the darkroom. And it's just the perfect fusion of the technology, the camera, the concept. You know, this is a panorama camera. So what is he photographing? He's photographing these great panoramic scenes. And it's from the series called The Other City. And I encourage y'all to go to his website and look at it. It's absolutely brilliant. So he's photographing all these really elongated scenes around the New Orleans area, and they're just beautiful. Parking garages, trains, things like that that are longer than they are width versus height, and it's just really, really smart work. And once again, the craftsmanship that's involved with this. Now we can argue like, oh, everybody is a photographer with their phone, but I'm sorry. That's just bull. When you have, you know, this person makes the image, he actually knows how to work an aperture and shutter speed, then he takes the image, develops the film, takes it in the darkroom and prints it, enslaves over it, makes a beautiful image. There's a big difference between, you know, we're all photographers and who's really a photographer, and Tom is a photographer. And anyway, it's a fantastic image, fantastic series, and I hear he has a show at Stonehenge coming up. So, and I don't think it's this work, but I think he's the next up at Stonehenge Gallery. So keep an eye out for that. But yeah, I just think it's the perfect synthesis of concept and application, the technology, craftsmanship. And I'm going to butcher this person's name, Arbino Sunarab. This is from the Color series, and it's a beautiful sky at night, a glimpse of heaven. This person works in cybersecurity, and he's also a hiker and mountain biker and a photographer from Atlanta. And I love this image of the Milky Way. Now, I'm not sure how he did it, but I know that a lot of people that do this kind of night photography, they set a camera on a tripod or that has that kind of moves, that has a movement, it moves with the rotation of the earth, so you can do these long exposures of the heavens. So, you know, I'm a sucker for these kind of images. It's just very, and I think it's, if A Glimpse of Heaven is the title, I think it lives up to its name. This is Christine Freeman, black and white category, Live Oak Cemetery. I tried to look which live oak, because every state has a live oak. We have one in Florida, but I don't know where this was taken. I couldn't find any information on this artist, but I would put this in the Southern Gothic category. I could see this as a cover for a Flannery O'Connor book. It could also be, you know, in the Clarence John Laughlin School of Southern Gothic, you know, with the Spanish moss and the graveyard. It definitely sets a mood. So that's what I liked about it. You know, photograph needs to set a mood, and this one definitely does. So I think she's successful that way. This is Mary Louise Miller, and the image is Biltmore Coy. Mary Louise is in the audience, and I met her last night, and she's from South Carolina. She got a bachelor's degree in journalism from the University of South Carolina. She has a very interesting website. I say go look at it if you get a chance. Very distinct work, a lot of photojournalistic work. This is from her Everyday Color series, and what I like about it is very disorienting about it. I guess, I don't know, the way that the lilies and then the fish, it just kind of threw me for a loop, and I like that about it. And I just thought it was very beautiful and strong image that once again sets a mood. So that's what drew me to this image, and I guess the movement and the fish and then the stillness of the rest of the image I just thought was very successful. So that concludes our PowerPoint today.